I'm going to introduce this next speaker, and I'm going to do it in a very fun way. I'm going to change the manner in which I'm doing it because I feel like this guy needs a legendary type of, introduction. So I'm going to do this. At a time of regulatory complexity, technological disruption, and economic pressure, his leadership remains both steady and forward-looking, representing the interests of thousands of businesses that keep our sector moving from dealerships and workshops to the broader mobility ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of the Retail Motor Industry Organization. Make some noise for Ipileng Mabusela.
I think that's the best intro I've ever had. Thanks, Mo. I'm looking for the clicky, guys, for my slides. Tembi, stop stealing the stuff, man. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. As introduced, I'm Ipileng Mabusela, the RMI CEO. Mo, I heard you said you're a lecturer. Try being a comedian. I think there's a good career for you going there. They've asked me to be no longer than 10 minutes. I will do my best. I see that the countdown says 8 here on the clock. So Brendan, I'm going to go a bit longer than you. Very briefly, I'm going to present slides that I presented in Parliament about 2 months ago, roughly, towards the end of Jan. And I thought it would be good for this audience to get a feel of some of the things we position in the work we do. To Brendan's point, if we're doing our jobs well, you shouldn't really hear from us. It means we're creating policy, we're influencing. My dad asked me, what exactly do you do for a living? And I said, I have clandestine meetings. I have coffees in lobbies with government officials, trying to explain what the sector is, what it does, so that when they make these decisions, they're well informed. So, in terms of context, I think for a long time, people haven't fully understood that we cover everything from the time a car is born until it dies. Yeah, so its entire lifestyle. Whether that's dealerships, which is you guys, whether that's workshops, panel shops, engine remanufacturing, body repairs, fuels, vehicles, and more. So it's important that we're able to put for these government officials this full context, because when they think of the auto sector, they think vehicle manufacturing. They don't think about this entire value chain that we have. Some of you would know there's a policy called the South African Automotive Master Plan to 2035, which is looking at trying to increase not only vehicle production, but also vehicle sales in the country. And we posit that without us, without considering us, and that policy doesn't consider us, that it will fail. What's changed as a result, they're reviewing this policy now, and we're integral to those conversations all the way to minister level at the DTIC. The second thing I wanted to show is, and this is a bit of a small joke that I said, is when Donald Trump sneezes, we don't catch a flu, for the most part. Right? The aftermarket is quite resilient to geopolitical challenges, not immune, as we've seen with some of the wars going on, but to a large extent, much more resilient and much more agile than, say, manufacturing. When they asked me, are you guys ready for electric vehicles? We said, we're doing it right now. Yeah, we don't have a 7-year lead time on a manufacturing plant. We're able to adjust and do that kind of work immediately. What you're seeing in the graph is essentially jobs growth, compounding annual growth of 1.2%, despite economic headwinds, lack of skills, slow GDP growth, an aging fleet, all of those challenges. We continue to grow essentially slightly better than GDP. We saw the GDP numbers coming out this week as well at 1.1%. What you're also seeing is the sheer size of the sector. The graph in blue is the number of jobs in the aftermarket. Brendan said it, more than 300,000 odd jobs that we look after in this part of the world, compared to, for example, manufacturing jobs at, say, roughly 80,000. Huge, yeah? The largest employer within the retail, actually within the automotive sector. And for a large part, I think that's something that we don't say enough, that we don't publicize enough, that we don't show that our relative scale and size is so important and so significant. Another important thing we did, a little piece of work we did, was let's quantify for ourselves, what is our actual contribution to GDP? I mean, we keep hearing numbers, 5%, 6%. So we got some very clever people, some professor types, to do some maths, look at some stats, essays, stats, and all of those things. And essentially what you're seeing in the little gray block on the left is we're about 5.1% of GDP as an automotive sector. But us, you guys, all of us, we're more than 54% of automotive sector GDP contribution. So that's 202 billion that we contribute to this economy. That's not small. That's significant. That's close to 3% of contribution. And I think we should be quite proud of that as an industry. And this is what we have to pitch to the powers that be, that make up policy, which is why we are now included in rooms we've never been in before, not only with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, but also the Department of Transport as well. In terms of skills, I think it was spoken to with Motoring Mavericks that it's important that we attract young people to the sector and retain them in the sector as well. What you're seeing here is a decline in artisans over the years, 31% decline in artisans from 2014 to 2024. We're getting this data from our bargaining council at MIPCO, while apprentices are on the up. So there's clearly a problem. There's a leakage. You can't have people coming in more than they used to, but we have fewer artisans. It means we're losing them to other sectors. It means they're not completing their courses. We're losing them to other countries like the UK and Australia. And it's important that we're able to deal with this, because this is how we're going to see sustainability of our sector, but also transformation within our sector. This is a program called Project Denao, named after our intern. I think I saw her somewhere here earlier today. We named the project because she was leading it, and we were in the room, and he said, what do we call the project? And we said, well, you're the one. For those of you who don't know, Denao means gift in Setswana. And it's about the gift of giving young people a future. We cannot have, on the one hand, 50-odd% youth unemployment, and then on the other, we have a lack of skills like I've shown you in the previous graph. So what this is about collaboration, and I think that's my message to all of us, that we need to hold hands, work together, support Motoring Mavericks in the way that you can, and all of these programs we have in the sector. Essentially, this program goes out to technical schools, invites a bunch of young kids, runs a competition, and at the end, you say, here's a car, it's got 3 faults in it, make the car start. If the car starts, you're in the program, you get funded to go to college, you get placed at our members, whether it's dealerships or workshops or anything else as part of your training. And at the end, most importantly, you get absorbed into the sector. So it's one of those initiatives that we're working quite hard on trying to achieve the impact we want. And I think for context, we work quite well with Mesita, which is our SETA, of course. I think from them, total funding, 132 million of funding towards training people in the sector, whether that's apprentices, whether that's short skills, whether that's various other things, thought leadership and training. These are the kind of things that we need to do as a sector, as an industry, to make sure that we survive and we remain sustainable. I think towards the end, we spoke about road safety and vehicle accidents. As you can see, 11,000 fatalities on our roads. 4 in 5 cars go untested annually. We have a regime where taxis and buses get tested. You would have seen the state of our taxis. It makes you question how strong that testing regime is. I grew up with taxis, so I know there was a hole in the bottom. I could see the floor. 205 billion is the loss that we have to the economy based on accidents. So our argument to Department of Transport, to Parliament as well, was we cannot be worse than Nigeria in terms of our testing regime. As cars get older, we have to find ways to be able to test them, to make sure they're safe to be on our roads, to save lives, and of course what it means for you is, therefore, to get more work from these vehicles, whether it's brakes or lights or whatever it is that might need to be fixed. It's quite important also that we positioned, Brendan touched on it, that we cannot have a policy regime that is so hectic, so onerous, so heavy that you can't do business. So we proposed a risk-adjusted compliance regime that says, depending on your complexity and your risk, you have to have a certain amount of compliance and rigor you have to go through. But the lower or the less complex you are, the less you have to deal with that. Colleagues, I think that's it. Exactly on time. Thank you so much.